How's it going, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We're going to be checking out a video called What New York Could Learn from Amsterdam's Streets by the channel Streetscapes. Links down below. This was suggested by the Google Forms, which I have a link down below if you want to make a suggestion. Thanks for watching with me, guys.
This is a street in New York City, and this is a street in Amsterdam. At first glance, both cities have streets of similar widths, but the design choices couldn't be more different. One is a perfect example of a badly designed street, while the other has a solution that works. In New York, a wide and straight road is packed with cars, while in Amsterdam, people cycle on smooth red asphalt, and an efficient transit corridor keeps the city moving. Its design makes it one of the world's most advanced street profiles, but it wasn't always this way. Decades ago, citizens in both countries protested, but change only came to Amsterdam. The city looks completely different today. New York promises change, but will it ever happen?
Probably not.
New York and Amsterdam take radically different approaches to planning public space. To illustrate this, we'll compare two major streets, 3rd Avenue in New York and Overtoom in Amsterdam. They have similar widths, and they serve the same purpose, connecting neighborhoods and acting as transit corridors. But the design of both streets couldn't be more different. On Overtoom, about 31% of the space is dedicated to cars, and public transport and cyclists each get their lanes. On 3rd Avenue, cars dominate. About 67% of public space is used for moving or parking cars. However, things used to be different. American cities had some of the best public transport systems in the world. 3rd Avenue had an elevated railway and a streetcar system. People also cycled. But then, everything changed. By the 1920s, cars had become more affordable and started taking over city streets. By the 1950s, more people were moving to the suburbs. Traffic was rising and cities prioritized cars. Highways were designed to connect all major cities in the US, and unlike in Europe, highways were built cutting straight through city centers. This combined with the rise of parking lots and modern office buildings led to thousands of beautiful buildings being demolished. Streetcar networks were ripped out.
And that's probably why they didn't do it in Europe, is because you'd have to get rid of all the buildings, and there's a lot more history in Europe and stuff than there is here in the United States. So it's a lot easier for us to just justify like ripping out a bunch of buildings. Whereas in Europe, you have a lot of these buildings that sometimes are hundreds of years old. So it's like a little bit harder to do that. So they skirt everybody around the outskirts of the city, which is great. This kind of reminds me of Not Just Bikes channel, which I don't know why I'm not subscribed. I'm going to go ahead and subscribe. You should too, actually, because this is good content so far. Let's check it out. I feel like I've seen this channel before. I feel like I've definitely came across this channel before and probably done a reaction to one of their videos or something. So I don't know how I didn't get subscribed. But anyways, I'm subscribed now. So
cobble streets were paved over with asphalt. 3rd Avenue was no exception. The elevated railway and the streetcar network was destroyed. Cars took over American cities. Buses were supposed to replace the old routes, but that never happened. Walkable and transit-friendly cities disappeared. By the late 1960s, Dutch cities were changing similarly, but unlike the US, they kept their tram networks largely intact. In both countries, congestion and road crashes rose, sparking resistance. In New York, activists like Jane Jacobs fought back against further highway expansion. They successfully blocked the Cross-Manhattan Expressway, which would have demolished Soho. A similar plan also failed in Amsterdam. In 1973, the oil crisis led the Dutch government to introduce car-free Sundays. Both countries saw protests against rising traffic deaths, especially among children. But the movement only gained widespread support in the Netherlands.
yeah, I've done a reaction on, I can't remember the name of the video or anything like that, but it was a lot of the footage from the 70s, and it was showing like how much traffic fatalities there really was in the Netherlands, because there was just so many cars and it was just so congested before they started like diverting the cars away from the downtown. Like they never put highways in through downtown or anything like that, but there was just so many cars that was just driving through the downtown. And there was people protesting and talking about how the cars are killing their children and stuff, because a lot of kids are getting killed in the street by cars essentially. And yeah, it's very interesting. If I can think about it, if I can try to find the video, I can put a little card up there in the corner how they do, so you can click on it or whatever. If not, just go search for it, but I don't know what you would type in necessarily. I got hundreds of videos to sort through. But
Press conferences were held, and children visited the parliament. The Stop the Kindermoord campaign united people across different political beliefs. Politicians couldn't ignore the rising traffic deaths, and something had to be done. As complete redesigns would be too costly, early changes were cheap but effective. And over time, people cycling had to share the road with cars, so they painted bike lanes, and car lanes were reduced. Trams would get stuck in traffic throughout the city, therefore they installed concrete curbs to separate trams from cars. In
Okay.
1975, multiple groups from throughout the country formed a National Cyclist Union that advocated for taking bicycles seriously in traffic policy. At the time, many demonstrations also took place. Most of them were peaceful, some were not. Over time came the bigger shifts, Woonwerfs and car-free city centers. A Woonwerf is a shared street design to slow cars and prioritize pedestrians and cyclists. More streets were designed with narrower roadways and smaller intersections. This was a huge shift in thinking, as street design guidelines had long prioritized wide and straight roads. Though most streets didn't implement this shared space design, they adopted other traffic calming measures, such as raising intersections and putting in speed bumps. Gradually, Dutch cities redefined public space.
We willen het zoveel mogelijk verplaatsen naar de Hobbemarkade, naar de Amsteldijk en naar de Wieboudstraat. Dus via de oude pijp nemen we zoveel mogelijk in richting.
It's really cool to actually see like the progression of how it started because like earlier, for instance, when they mentioned how they just didn't have enough room, so they just had, at first it was just like, okay, share the streets, with the bicyclists, right? When the oil crisis happened. So then it's like, okay, well, what do we do next to solve this issue? Because we got so many bikes and cars together. Okay, we just paint like a dedicated bike lane. Boom. Then okay, well, we need to separate. Then they started putting the little concrete barriers to separate, and it's just cool to see the progression of it starting and then knowing what it is like today. It's just really cool.
Verkeer. En voor mij lijkt dus de buurt een aangewezen gebied om nu hier dus te beginnen met een proef van 30 km snelheid in deze straten.
All streets in the Netherlands were categorized into two types: traffic areas and residential areas. Traffic areas are larger streets that prioritize vehicle flow, like Overtoom.
Okay.
And residential areas are quieter streets where through traffic is restricted and livability is prioritized. Residential areas would have a 30 km/h speed limit and preferably be made one way for cars, while cyclists would be exempt. Cobblestone and brick were reintroduced, not just for aesthetics, but to slow down cars naturally. Meanwhile, traffic areas kept asphalt for efficiency. Cars continued to be a problem in city centers, and much like in the US, there were a bunch of parking lots and office buildings, making them undesirable places to live or spend free time. In response, cities like Groningen divided the city center into 4 zones. Cars couldn't drive directly from one area to another anymore, and instead had to make a detour. People walking and cycling were given priority. This plan was controversial among shop owners. They protested and called it an assassination attempt on the city. Fewer cars and parking spaces would mean fewer customers, but the opposite happened.
Because it became a walkable city, so more people went out and done stuff. So like as you're out walking to one place, you're actually noticing and seeing other places you would have never saw when you're just out driving around. Yeah, you see a lot more stuff when you slow down.
Today, each of the 20 largest Dutch cities has restrictions on car use in the city center, making them some of the world's best urban environments. City centers came back to life, foot and bicycle traffic increased, and businesses are thriving. But the key to success wasn't a few cases of unrest. It was 20 years of increasing public support, efforts to redesign streets with protected bike lanes, and measures to restrict cars in the city center. All of these efforts worked. Since the 1970s, traffic fatalities have dropped by 80%.
That's why I don't understand why they don't just do it here, because it's clearly it works. There's the model, there's your test model right there. Like it works. Do the same thing here. That's all you have to do. Like big cities like New York City or like Chicago or whatever, do the same thing. Bust out a grid pattern. These are residential areas. This is traffic areas. These are prohibited here. Make bike lanes. Do the same process that's already been done there and is proven to work. I just don't understand why they don't.
Many streets look unrecognizable compared to 50 years ago. The way public space is allocated in each city directly impacts how people travel. In New York, 34% of trips are made by car, and only 3% are made by bike, while in
Because they don't allow the infrastructure, they don't make it easy for people on bikes. That's why. If they made it easy for people on bikes, it'd be a lot more than 3%. Guarantee it.
Amsterdam, 21% are made by car, and 34% are made by bike.
Exactly.
A direct result of building safe bike lanes in a dense city. Meanwhile, in the US, the car-centric mindset remains. A major factor in this was the rise of suburbia after World War II. Millions of Americans live in sprawling areas where driving is the only practical option. And
Yeah.
low population density makes transit funding difficult. Even in downtowns, where cycling and transit used to be the go-to options, American downtowns are still for cars. However, New York is beginning to correct its past mistakes. The city has been constructing protected bike lanes to alleviate traffic congestion and improve road safety. However, this
Nice.
remains an exception rather than the norm. Streets like Third Avenue reflect the car-centric design that dominates American streets. Third Avenue has remained largely unchanged for the past 50 years. Overtown, meanwhile, has been completely transformed. Today, the street is a dedicated transit corridor that also provides a clear path for emergency vehicles, and the painted bike lanes have been transformed into curbside protected bike lanes that allow cyclists and people with disabilities to move around safely. People could cycle on Third Avenue, but would you let your kid cycle here? While Overtown has evolved into a safe street
Yeah,
for all
right.
users, Third Avenue remains stuck in the past. If someone is
I would absolutely not want to go on to no Third Avenue in New York. I've never been to New York, but I've been to Chicago, and I know how people drive there and how crazy busy the roads are. There would be absolutely no way I'd be wanting to be on one of those streets right there with a bicycle. Not the way they drive.
is brave enough to cycle, they are forced to squeeze between cars. Buses can get stuck in traffic, and
Yeah.
pedestrians have to cross multiple lanes of traffic. Because Third Avenue has a wide and straight roadway with no physical obstacles, it is easier and more comfortable to drive fast. Wide and straight roads are dangerous, especially for pedestrians. From the above, we can see the difference. Third Avenue has 5 lanes of traffic that encourage high speeds. In contrast, Overtown only has 2 lanes of traffic and a lower speed limit of 30 kilometers an hour. This has helped to reduce air and noise pollution on the street. Also, notice how the roadway is completely straight in New York, but has slight curves in Amsterdam. This makes drivers pay attention and slow down. In New York, dangerous driver choices are a primary cause or contributing factor in 70% of pedestrian fatalities. But blaming drivers
Well, and it's kind of cool too, like because the way it curves and stuff, and then you can put like little parking areas here and trees, and and it just makes it look nice.
contributing factor in 70% of pedestrian fatalities. But blaming drivers alone ignores a key factor. Street design directly impacts driver behavior and speed. This is why traffic islands are a crucial design element. Traffic islands should have raised curbs that center from the road and include a traffic column. In the
What is it?
Netherlands, they're everywhere because they make drivers
Oh,
slow down and pay more attention, making the street safer for everyone. Most importantly, traffic islands allow people to cross in multiple stages. This makes crossing safer and more comfortable. Additional safety
okay.
features, such as warning markings and reflective elements, help keep drivers alert.
Wow. The Dutch people really did think of everything. That is insane. Dutch efficiency. That's why they say, if it ain't Dutch, it ain't much, right, guys?
Although the street is just one lane in each direction, it is enough, since intersections determine road capacity. This is why additional lanes are added only before intersections. To improve traffic flow, traffic detection strips on both the roadway and bike lanes means that every light cycle is adjusted to real-time traffic flow. Left turns are especially dangerous, so they usually have a dedicated light cycle to prevent potential head-on crashes. And at intersections with smaller streets, where there aren't traffic lights, exit constructions ensure that pedestrians and cyclists don't have to step down into the street, unlike in New York, where the sidewalk stops before an intersection. In Amsterdam, beveled curbs make drivers slow down before entering a residential street, and the continuous design shows that pedestrians and cyclists have the right of way. Overtown's design naturally encourages more awareness and slower speeds. Meanwhile, Third Avenue's car-centric design encourages people to speed. Car-centric design defines American streets. This is one of the main reasons why New Yorkers are almost twice as likely to die in a road crash than Amsterdammers. But Overtown is not
Dang.
just safe, it's incredibly efficient. While accurately measuring the number of people
And it looks nicer too. I mean, look, does this look a lot nicer than New York City just packed full of cars? I mean, nothing but cars pretty much. This looks a lot nicer. It looks very, and it's separated like they're talking about. You have a section of bikes that blocks, and separates here from there, and yeah.
it's incredibly efficient. While accurately measuring the number of people a street can move is challenging, reliable estimates suggest that Overtown can handle around 46,000 people per hour, while Third Avenue manages only about 21,000. 6,000 people per
What?
hour, while Third Avenue manages only about 21,000.
Yeah. Wow. more people can flow through there. That's just crazy to think about. What does this mean? There's no sidewalks and or there's no trams and bike lanes in Third Avenue? I guess not. Yeah. Over here, you got drive lanes, bike lanes, sidewalks, and trams.
Cars take up a lot of space compared to trams and bicycles. A moving car takes up 28 times more space than a moving bicycle.
Yeah, it
But
does.
while we might call Overtime a traffic area, the street isn't just for traffic and parking. It's about balancing movement with creating a pleasant space for living and leisure. Streets are public spaces and bring people together. And of course, any street is nicer with trees, which create a much more pleasant space.
Yeah.
Several buildings also have facade gardens in front of them. These tiny greenery patches add a lot and improve the overall atmosphere. Outdoor dining areas also contribute to a more enjoyable and lively street. The combination of traffic flow and meeting places gives streets like Overtoom this distinct urban quality, while the rest of city streets are quiet residential streets.
And it just looks like it feels cozy. I'm not there, but just looking through the video and then visualizing myself standing there, it feels like that would be more cozy than anything around here as far as a public street goes in a city or town for sure.
A huge difference exists if we map out the traffic flow between the two cities. In New York, traffic passes by on all streets. In Amsterdam, traffic flows in traffic areas, while residential areas are only used to access buildings.
Yeah.
In most cities, cars are the main source of air and noise pollution. A clear hierarchy of loud and quiet streets minimizes exposure for as many people as possible. This is crucial as air pollution and environmental noise are leading causes of disease.
Yeah, I mean it's a huge thing, when you're in a city that's that populated, which I don't live in a city that's that populated. I'm in the middle of the country, in a small little community. I mean, there's a handful of houses around me, but nothing like that. That has to be like not good to breathe.
Limiting through traffic is essential for public health. This division of public space also means that Amsterdam doesn't need as many traffic lights as New York does because of lower traffic volumes. But
Right.
because Overtoom is a traffic area, it can of course see increased traffic. However, it's certainly not 5 lanes of cars, and you can avoid traffic by cycling or taking transit. The key is providing people multiple options to get around, like Amsterdam has with cycling and efficient bus and tram service. Because the only way to reduce traffic is to provide viable alternatives to driving. But the shift isn't just about transportation, it's about public health. Cycling brings economic health benefits of nearly 19 billion euros per year, improves both mental and physical well-being, and reduces air and noise pollution. Amsterdam understands this. Sustainable and healthy exercise is one of its 5 strategic development goals. New York, not so much. Every taxpayer funds road infrastructure, whether they drive or not. On streets like Overtoom, public space is allocated democratically. There's space for people to walk, cycle, take transit, and drive. Throughout
And space to park your bike.
however, is mostly street for cars. Streets for cars are far less efficient than streets for everybody. And of course, these vastly different design choices directly impact road safety. In 2014, New York launched Vision Zero, claiming that no road deaths are acceptable. The city has also set goals to prioritize public transit, walking, and biking. Yet streets like Third Avenue, like most in the city, they tell a different story. New York may be ahead of most US cities in sustainable transportation, but compared to Amsterdam, it's still far behind.
Yeah, it
If the
is.
city truly wants safer, more livable streets, and to reach a sustainable mode share of 80% by 2050, it must completely rethink its approach to street design. Change isn't just possible, it's necessary, and it's also a choice. A choice to keep the city not only moving, but healthy.
That was a good video. There was a lot of good information in that, and that's a good channel. So you should definitely go over there and subscribe to Streetscapes, guys. It kind of reminds me of that Not Just Bikes channel, actually, which I've done a ton of reactions to their channel. If you want to check them out, they're on there somewhere if you can find them. But anyways, thanks for the suggestion. There's links down below if you want to drop your own suggestion. Thanks for watching with me. Have a super fun, awesome day. I'll catch you in the next one. Take care, bye.